Please stop. Please. Please stop doing that. Hello? Oh. Yeah, that's probably another problem we're going to have to fix. This might look like the NWA's latest lowrider, but it is in fact my new 2.5 DSC P38 Range Rover, which is meant to be a high-riding luxury SUV. Now, while gangster rappers of the 90s did love the Range Rover P38, the one they were all after was the 4.6 V8 petrol.
Check this out, what's this between a 4.0 and a 4.6? Like 30 to 40 grand, so I could beat it.
So I'm not sure what they would have thought about this piddly 2.5 BMW diesel under the bonnet of my one. In the last episode, I introduced this car to you guys, but in this one, I'm going to go through all of its faults in detail and go through my plans on how we're going to fix it and bring this car back to its former glory. So from what I can tell, this car was taken off the road in about 2016, so about 6 years ago now, and it seems like the previous owner did intend to bring it back onto the road at some point. For whatever reason though, he never got round to it. He sold it to Anton, and then Anton sold it to me. It's quite likely if I didn't buy this car from Anton, it could possibly have ended up being like one of those other cars in his yard. P38 heaven, guys. Being broken for parts, as so many of these cars are now. The sad reality is that at the moment this car's probably worth more in parts right now as it stands than as a complete functioning vehicle. So aside from all the faults that will no doubt have developed over the last 6 years of sitting doing nothing, it's very likely this car was taken off the road in the first place due to some pre-existing faults. If you had a perfectly usable working car, you wouldn't take it off the road for no reason. So there's probably one or more faults on this car that at the time were just too much for the previous owner to rectify, and that's probably the reason why it got taken off the road. As to what those faults were, it's anybody's guess really, because now, as I said, those faults are kind of mixed in with the ones that have been created by leaving the car sitting for 6 years. So yeah, as I said in the previous video, probably the most unwise project car in the world. Now, one of the most obvious faults with the Range Rover is of course the air suspension. The fact it looks like a slammed Cadillac Fleetwood lowrider is symptomatic of a leaky air suspension system. Now, there is also some kind of electrical fault with the electronic air suspension system, but even when it does blow up, it leaks down very quickly overnight. There are a lot of places on these cars where air can leak out of the air suspension system. The air springs themselves, all of the pipework and connections between the air springs and the valve block, and then actually the valve block itself can be a cause of leaks as well. I'm almost certain that the air springs, which we've got one on each corner on this car, will be perished and leaking. It's just something that happens to them over time. There's nothing you can do about it really to prevent it. You just got to replace them. Now, the electronic air suspension system on the P38 is very different to the one that you'll find on the L322. It's actually a lot closer to the one that you'd find on the Range Rover Classic, which started getting air suspension towards the end of its life with the LSE and things like that. So inside this box under the bonnet lives our compressor, but also the main valve block for the suspension. So on the L322, the valves are distributed around the vehicle. You've got one on the compressor, one in the rear wheel arch, and one in the front wheel arch. However, on this system, all of the valves are together here on one block, and I think it's 8 solenoid operated valves that control all the various functions of the air suspension system. Now, inside this valve block, there is a metric ton of seals and O-rings that can perish and leak over time. Between all the little valleys and different connections within the valve block itself, there's an O-ring. But thankfully, the guys at X8R have sent me out this kit, which is a complete O-ring rebuild kit for the compressor. So in a future video, we'll be going through that valve block, replacing every single O-ring and seal in there, and I'll be covering that process in detail. But yeah, big shout out to the guys at X8R who sent this kit out for me. So it's highly likely this compressor's already been replaced at least once in its life before, but it's probably pretty tired now. So with a new O-ring and a new piston sleeve in there, it should be brought back up to nice high performance to make sure we're getting a good flow of compressed air out of this thing so the system can work properly. The elephant in the room, of course, is that horrible noise the engine's making when it's running. Now, when I initially heard this noise when I viewed the car at Anton's, I was really scared by it. I thought that sounded to me like a timing chain noise. And although I think I'd be perfectly capable of doing that job, I really didn't want to have to do it. But I had to play with the fan whilst the engine's turned off, and I was actually able to rotate the outer part of the crank damper just by rotating the fan here. And if you guys can probably hear that clicking noise, that is the noise that's making that horrible clacking whilst the engine's running. So I'm pretty confident that replacing that crank damper should fix that horrible noise and getting the engine sounding nice and smooth again. And apart from that, the engine's just basically going to get a really good service and a good going over all over. Actually, while we're in here, we'll have a quick look at this transmission fluid, because I've not looked at this yet. And wow, okay. That is some nice black looking fluid there, guys, that you guys can see on the end. I mean, it's not totally black, but it's definitely pretty mucky. And that black transmission oil might explain why the car came with a transmission oil pan seal and also this filter for the transmission as well. Obviously the previous owner probably thought there might have been something wrong with the transmission. Maybe it was slipping a little bit or doing some funky changes, but looking at the state of that oil, it's definitely due a change. Maybe we'll even try and do a bit of a flush on it by doing the oil change twice. So I'm definitely going to need to add about 20 litres of ATF to the parts list, I think. So while the air suspension system is inactive at the moment, I can actually get it to blow up by using a little trick that Anton taught me. You can use a piece of wire like this to basically short circuit the relay and force the compressor to run. So we can get the system to lift up, but it is very slow to elevate, so I think that compressor probably is pretty worn out. And then also it leaks down very quickly overnight, so definitely some problems to solve, but it's good that we can actually get it to do something at least. So there you go, it's looking a lot better. Not quite perfectly level, but we'll take it for now. To me, that's quite a positive sign that the air suspension system will actually pump up, it will try and level itself out, and the valves seem to be operating as they sort of should be. So it's probably really bad juju to say so, but I reckon we'll be able to get this EAS system working perfectly again without too much trouble. With Range Rovers, there's always kind of two opposing schools of thought on the air suspension system. On one hand, you've got the people that say, get rid of the air suspension, put some coil springs on it, don't ever have any trouble with it ever again. And then on the other side, which is the side I'm on, if you guys hadn't guessed, is you've got to keep the air suspension on the Range Rover. It's an integral part of the design of these cars, and if you take that integral feature away from the Range Rover, you might as well just go and buy something else. Believe it or not, Land Rover, especially back in the 80s and 90s, were really masters of suspension design for 4x4s. They put an enormous amount of development into these cars to try and make them excellent on-road as well as performing better than any other SUV off-road at the same time. So to me, taking out the air suspension system is hamstringing the Range Rover in the worst possible way. It's definitely got to stay. Now, having sat for about 6 years, something that's really suffered on the Range Rover are the brakes. As you guys can see, the discs are really heavily corroded. The pedal is almost completely solid, which kind of indicates that the calipers are probably seized up as well. And basically my plan with the brakes is to completely overhaul them. We're going to go new discs, new pads all round, rebuild kits on all the calipers, and obviously do a complete brake flush as well to get the old brake fluid out of there. When they were new, the P38 Range Rover actually had one of the most powerful braking systems of any 4x4 that had ever been made. So when they're working properly, they're actually extremely powerful brakes. I think at the moment though, you'd probably be better chucking an anchor out the back to slow this thing down. These guys aren't stopping anything. Please stop. Please. Please stop doing that. Hello? Oh. Yeah, that's probably another problem we're going to have to fix. Pretty sure the cause of that is this button. The spring's just broken in it, so whenever you push it in, it doesn't come back out again. So that actuator's kind of just shitting itself, basically. But you can knock it out with a handily placed fist thump. For some reason, the truck's also missing the cables that hold this lower tailgate up, so you can't sit on this at the moment, unfortunately, which is the best thing about having a Range Rover of any kind. Yeah, so we'll have to get some of those cables ordered up. Oh, God, it's so comfy back here. And aside from a slightly dodgy smell in here, like it's been sat for a long time, which it has, it's actually still in really pretty good condition, really. These seats are really nice. I've just got a feeling this leather is going to clean up really, really well in here. But yeah, apart from that, you guys can probably see that the headlining, which looks, although it was probably a nice colour when it was new, looks a bit disgusting now, and it of course is sagging down as all Range Rovers are. And as well as that, all of these pillars, which would originally have been covered in this sort of soft flocking material, have all kind of lost their material. Some of them look like they've been cleaned up a bit better than others, like these ones here have still got this kind of horrible sticky residue left on them. And I think probably what the plan is in here, and my girlfriend's probably going to be leading this a bit more than I will be, being a lot better with fabrics than I am. But I think we're going to probably take off all of these pillars, take out the headlining, and then recover all of them. And then the dashboard is actually pretty nice, with the exception of those horrible fake wood stickers that have been put on everything. But yeah, apart from a few bits of sort of missing trim here and there, I think the interior will come together pretty nicely, and it should become a really nice place to sit and be again. On the outside of the Range Rover, the paintwork is looking a little bit tired from 24 years of use and of course Irish weather. But I think we can probably bring it back with a mop and a polish. And the bits that are obviously scratched and scraped, like we've got some grazes down here and there's a few more around the car, I've had some good success in the past with spraying over those areas and blending them into the existing paintwork. So we might have a go at doing a bit of that on this car as well. Things like this plastic trim that have kind of faded, we're going to try and see if we can bring that back somehow. I need to research the best way of doing stuff like that. But overall, my goal is to just try and freshen it up so it looks a lot closer to how it looked back in its glory days in the mid-90s. I would normally sit on the tailgate, but as it's missing those straps, I'm just going to have to settle for sort of perching awkwardly on the bumper. Now that probably just about sums up everything that I can see on the Range Rover initially. There's probably going to be loads more stuff that pops up once we start digging into the repairs, but that's just the way it is, and hopefully we'll be prepared for them when they do come up. I'm going to stand up actually, this is just too awkward. Those of you that have watched my previous videos will know that I like to have the proper diagnostics tools to work on my car. With the L322, that means the IID tool. That's probably the most powerful tool available for that car, but unfortunately due to the age of this car, it won't work with it, so we've got to get something else. Now thankfully, Black Box Solutions have come to the rescue and offered me the loan of one of their Nanocom Evolution systems. Now the Nanocom Evolution is to the P38 what the IID tool is to the L322, basically the most powerful system you can get for this kind of era of Land Rovers. And with that Nanocom system, we're going to be able to interrogate basically all the systems on the Range Rover, and we should be able to solve a lot of the electrical gremlins, or at least get a clue as to what's going on with the car through the use of that system. Another really useful feature is we're going to be able to recalibrate the air suspension system once we've done all the work on it, just to make sure it's sitting nice and level and that there are no fault codes on it as well. It's not actually arrived yet, but once it does, it's going to be featured in the videos and you guys will be able to see exactly how I'm going to use it to get this P38 working as it should be. So next week we will be diving headfirst into the repairs on this Range Rover. I don't know how many episodes there's going to be or what order they're going to be in, but I'm just hoping basically I can do justice to this old girl with this video series. I do have to say actually thank you to everybody who has responded and watched the first video. I've been blown away by the response to it. It seems like the P38 community is crying out for new content on their cars, so I'm very glad to be able to do so. The vast majority of the response so far has been really positive, people agreeing with me that this car needs to be saved, so it's good to know that I'm not completely mad and that this car is also loved by a lot of you guys out there as well. So yeah, thank you for all the great comments so far. I love reading them and responding to them, so keep them coming. So yeah, that's basically going to be it for this video, guys. If you want to see how this P38 project progresses, hit that subscribe button, leave a like and a comment down below if you fancy. And also don't forget you can head over to the Sam's Motor Machine Teespring store to get yourself some merch like this. And yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. Cheers. And one last thing, I don't want to mention the Patreon every week, but I just wanted to tell you all that I've added a new £1.50 a month tier, which hopefully is a little more affordable for those who want to show their support. If you choose this tier, you'll get access to completely ad-free versions of all my future videos, as well as helping support projects like this one. Cheers!